Can you hear me? Hello, there's plenty of seats at the front if y'all like. I got a little after 9 o'clock, so out of the respect for everybody's time, we're going to get started. My name is Roy Teal. I work for the City of Fort Worth. I'm the manager of the construction office, and I'm going to talk to you about our construction services, and what the services we provide for city infrastructure projects. Primarily, we have three core functions: that's surveying, material testing, and inspection. As far as we're organized, I'm the construction manager. I have a manager over the lab, Zalalam. I also have Louis Gregory. He's our superintendent for the construction inspectors. And I have a survey manager position that's been vacant for an awful long time. And so if any of you all know any surveyors looking for a job, we have it posted right now. For some reason, surveyors are hard to find. But this is our area organized in the construction office. We're actually located out West Fort Worth in Camp Bowie, near West Loop 820 and I-30. We're not here at City Hall, so whenever there's pre-construction meetings, they're held at our office out at Camp Bowie. We have the entire third floor, and that's where all of our, most of our team is assembled out there in the construction office. We're part of the Capital Delivery Division, and that's an internal service fund. We don't receive any funding from taxpayers, not directly. We generate fees based off of assessments to our city departments and the developers for the inspection and material testing. Customer departments, we essentially act as an internal consulting firm for the city. So we provide these services for different departments: aviation, legal, park, TBW, water, and planning development. And so we provide a variety of services, much like the consulting community do for our internal departments. Our survey group, we're organized. We have the survey superintendent position. Again, that's vacant right now, but we have engineering technician, survey techs, and an admin assistant. And we provide a variety of services. We provide topographical surveys. We do platting and title research for properties. We do right-of-way surveys, boundary surveys, and easement descriptions and exhibits. We also do some construction staking. Most of our construction staking is related to the water department miscellaneous contracts. I don't know if you, you have a project that's not large enough to go through the IPRC, you go through the water department miscellaneous group. And any work orders issued out of that group, they come to our survey team for us to do the construction staking on that. We also provide support to our inspectors. Every project that we have, we put it off in our project location system. We have a team that keeps that up to date so that when we get calls or inquiries to construction in particular areas, we're able to go to that system and quickly assess if we have a project out there, and if so, who the contractor is and who the inspector is to, find out information on a project to get whatever the concern may be resolved. We also do, at the end of the project, the contractors provide red lines. And so the survey team, they'll receive those red lines once they've been reviewed by the inspectors, and we'll scan those documents and we upload them into the system so that they can become record lines for, record drawings for our projects. And so we provide that service too. We also do some QA/QC work on some of our projects. Sometimes we have disputes with quantities on with contractors. And we'll go out there and do some as-built surveying to justify the quantities for that project and help resolve whatever that dispute may be. And so we have a small team that provides these services. And so we do a lot of augmentation through our consultants. And so we have, right now, we have 5 firms that we work with to provide these services to our client departments. Material testing. We have lab manager, engineering techs, and admin assistant. The material testing lab, our admin team is out at the Camp Bowie office, but our actual lab is physically located out in East Fort Worth near Village Creek and 287. We have a facility out there, and out there we provide paving coring. So we have some of the projects, after the projects are complete, we used to do a depth check, and we go out there and core the pavement and measure the thickness. We also do some concrete strength test out there and test on the soil properties. We also do concrete cylinders. We you have the sump test, air test, and go out there, make the cylinders and do the compressive strength test. And then we also have the capabilities to do densities, and that's both for the asphalt and then compaction. We also provide a support service for our inspection team. After new water lines are put in, we have to do some testing on it before we can make that water available to the public, make sure it's safe. And so we do some back-T testing on that water. And so our lab, they act as they have the capacity with inspectors. If the inspector can't make it out to the site to take sample, some of our lab personnel will go out there and take those samples on for that project. We also approve mix designs for the projects. Each project, if it has concrete and asphalt, we have to make sure that mix adheres to our specifications. And so our lab manager and our lab group, they'll look at those mix designs for each project and make sure that it adheres to our specifications. We also get involved in some forensic investigations. Sometimes we get these premature street failures where the pavement has cracked soon after construction. And we kind of work with our consulting firms because we augment the capacity with that team also with professional services agreement with consulting firms. And we have 11 of them, and those are the firms that are listed up there. But they help us support our role in providing material testing on both the city projects and the developer projects. A few changes. Before, the labs were uploading their information into Buzzsaw, and as most of you all are aware, Buzzsaw went away a few weeks ago. And so what's happening now is for the city projects, there's a system called BIM 360, and that's where that information is being stored on the city side. And for developer projects, there's a system named Excella that the information pertaining to the projects that'll be located. So before, Buzzsaw was where this information was contained, and now we have two systems. If it's a city project, it's going to be in BIM 360, and for a developer project, the system where that information is contained is Excella. Right now, the city contracts with the material testing labs on developer projects. We collect a fee from the developer, and the city in turn pays that material testing lab for the services rendered on that project. And that is going to change here pretty soon. What happens more often than not, that fee that we collect from the developer isn't sufficient, and the city has been having to subsidize the cost of the material testing on the projects. And so what we're doing is making a change to that process. The city is actually going to provide a select list of material testing labs. We had a RFQ out last week, and we received 20 responses. And so we're going to go through those responses and identify firms and come up with a select list of firms to provide testing for developer projects going forward. And what the developer will do, in turn, will contract directly with one of those listed firms. And that developer will pay that firm directly for the work, and that will ensure that that developer pays whatever the cost is associated with their project for material testing. And there will be a small administrative fee paid to the city for quality assurance of managing that program. Construction inspection. inspection team, we have Superintendent Louis Gregory. We have 4 supervisors that work with him and 9 senior inspectors and an array of both city and contract inspectors. We provide infrastructure inspection for just about all the infrastructure in the city. So we have street lights. We do the inspection on that, paving projects, concrete pavement. We do storm drainage structures and lines, water mains and sewer mains. Then we also do parks projects and streetscaping projects, to name a few. I'm going to talk briefly about the construction project timeline. We receive the plans down in the construction office. More often than not, we've had no involvement in that project before it gets down there. And so we recognize that project has a history, and sometimes we get that project, and the word is that this project's been at the city for 10 years, and we need to get this thing started immediately. And so we recognize that, and we do what we can to expedite that project. But most projects, we have no knowledge of that project until it's delivered to our office. And the first thing we do is obtain POs and verify that accounts are set up for it. Because again, we use a lot of staff augmentation through our consulting firms. And we have to make sure that we have funding in place to pay those firms. We want to make sure that if we have a lab that's performing the services on that project, that we have the ability to pay that lab. And the same thing with our construction inspectors. Then we set up a pre-construction meeting. Most times we try to get it set up within 7 days, and I think we do that more often than not. But we have to get that plan and get some knowledge of the project, give the inspector time to prepare for it, and then also work around their schedule. So we try to have that pre-con scheduled within 7 days of the date that we receive the project. And from there, the contractor establishes a start date, and they begin construction on the project. And so there's a period of time that goes through construction, and then we get to the point where the project is complete. And from there, we'll set up a final inspection. And at that final inspection, sometimes there may be punch list items. And so that contractor will, once we identify those punch list items, and once the contractor has completed that items, then we'll begin the closeout process. And there's a series of clearances that we require before we can close out the project. We check with our risk management department to make sure there's no claims against the project. We check with the material testing lab, make sure that they're not due any outstanding fees. We also check with water department, Victor Gootsler. Sometimes there are projects that are parent projects, and so if this project is tied into some off-site improvements that haven't been accepted, we want to make sure that we don't accept this project until those off-site projects are accepted. And then there's also some documentations that we require from the contractor. We'll get an affidavit of liens paid, and then we also get their consent of surety. So even after their final inspection, there are some things that are taking place in the background that may affect the point that we can close out that project. And so once we get all the clearances and we've received the closeout documentation from the contractor, we'll issue the green sheets, service reports, and acceptance letters. So the service reports on the developer projects, this is pretty critical. And the service report is simply just a document that identifies the location of the water and services, water and sewer services that provide those services to that particular lot. And so it'll have a description of where that's located. But the reason why this is important is it's like the only connection that really ties that project to the building permit process. If you've applied for a building permit and planning and development, if you hadn't gotten the if the water department group hadn't received their water and service reports, water and sewer service reports for that project, they're not going to release that permit. So this is really the only tie that connects that infrastructure project to the building permit. And so green sheet. Green sheet is simply a notice of completion form, and it's provided at the end of the project, and it includes information on the cost of the project. And it's used to capitalize the infrastructure and reconciliation of the fees by the CFA office. And it's executed by city staff, including the assistant city manager. And there's a number of documents that are attached to that green sheet or notice of project completion, and then we commonly refer to it as the green sheet package. And need to update this, but it is green for city projects, and we've kind of implemented an electronic process for developer projects. We're actually using a system called eSign. It's kind of like DocuSign, but we're electronically approving the green sheets for developer projects, and so that's not really green. Right now, our workload, we have an active 255 projects, and primarily most of those are developer projects, followed closely by the city projects. And we actually do inspection on the franchise utilities. And so if there's say a city project and they're putting in some storm drainage improvements and Admis needs to do a relocation, well, whenever Admis come in to get a permit for that relocation, it's assigned to one of our inspectors. And so we do provide some inspection services for franchise utilities. And then you look at the cost, we have about $372 million worth of active construction projects right now. And that's a pretty large number. And again, we supplement our services with consultants. And so we have 9 firms that help us out with construction inspection. I think right now we have about 25 inspectors provided by these firms helping us in our effort to provide the inspection on these projects. Well, right now we're making some changes again with the developer projects. Currently our fee is based off of a percentage of the construction cost. And again, more often than not, we're not collecting enough from the development community. And so with these projects, what we tend to see is there's a correlation between the length of time out there and the inspection cost. And so we have inspectors that are out there providing services on a daily basis. And if we have a contract that originally was intended to go 90 days and that project goes 180 days, we're still out there inspecting that project. And so you can imagine that our inspection cost is not really relative to the cost of the project, but it's relative to the length of the project. And so that's the direction we're going in. We're going to be assessing the inspection fees based off of the length of the construction. And so right now we're working with the Planning and Development Department. They're going through the revision process of the CFA ordinance. And we turned in final city comments last week. And I believe there's a development group that's providing input on the process. And so we've kind of turned the document over to them. And hopefully we'll be at a point of having the CFA policy updated within the next few months. But that's when a lot of these changes are set to occur. Public engagement. There was a time when most of the development projects had little to no effect on the residents. There are a lot of greenfield developments out there. And what we're starting to notice is a lot of these developer projects are starting to be more infill in nature, especially on the commercial and the multifamily. And so there's been a lot of projects that have been had an impact on the residents, and there has been no public engagement with the residents. And so naturally, if you are a resident of a subdivision, if you see some sort of construction going on in your neighborhood and you weren't aware of it, they're going to express concerns with that. And so we're seeing more and more of that with our projects. And so be on the lookout for some projects when there's going to be an impact on the residents. You may be requested to actually do some sort of public engagement to give those residents an opportunity to be informed of the project and aware of the project, so that when contractor shows up out there at the project site, it's not their first time being introduced to that project. City specifications, again, Buzzsaw went away, but there is a web portal out there that we still contain our resources folder. And so you can still go out there and all the items that were in the resource folders, you can get access to them through this website. All of our specifications are in there and our agreements, the inspector tools and information for the contractors, the pre-qualifications list. That's still available out there on the web version of Buzzsaw. And at the end of the day, construction happens. And so if there's any questions about anything related to construction on your projects or just you as a citizen of the city have questions about projects, I know I go down Granbury Road, and right now that project's under construction, and I have a few things I'd like to talk to the inspector about. But if there's an impact that you have on a project and you have questions about it, please give us a call. And with that, if there are any questions, I'll be happy to entertain them. Yes, sir.
You said that you also serve as what is called a title search. So a city department requests your department to do a title search. Or title means what is called, right of way or easement, old easements. So how much time do you take, or how many days does it take to complete the search? And how do you charge the city department, other department who?
Yeah, we charge the department. It's just going to depend on the nature of the work. Right now, we've got requests from our traffic signals group. They're making some improvements to the intersection of Berry and Old Mansfield Road and Hewlin Street at Ranch View. And so they requested a survey on that. And so it's just going to depend on the amount of what information you're looking for. They're looking for a topo. They want to establish the right-of-way. They also want to pick up all the subsurface utilities. And so based off of the nature of the request, there's going to be a corresponding level of effort. So it's really going to depend on what is actually being requested.
I saw that, in a few cases, so there is a Tarrant County database where you can search the old, what is called, easements.
Yeah.
But a few times, that database doesn't contain all the easements. These are really old, or 60, 70, or 80 years old. But somehow those what is called, those easements, we get it through other sources. But so how do you reconcile that? Sometimes we don't get it from the county source or county database.
Yeah. Well, we primarily use the electronic system that the county has. But then if there's not a lot of information there, we actually go down to the county to kind of verify that. And then we can kind of pull up old plat records. But there is a fair amount of research that's necessary to kind of identify those property boundaries. And once you identify that, if you go out there and you're able to find the pins, that's great. But sometimes you have to set the pins, and that might expand, how far back you need to go to the next PI to identify that. So. Again, there's a lot of tools out there for researching it, but primarily, we use the county records. No questions for Tim.
Ask away.
Roy, good presentation.
Oh, thanks, appreciate it.
This is part of the developer project questions related. So, Acela, I like the system so far. It's great, okay? The education on easements and water testing, reports, material testing, will that be available for us engineers to access directly, or is that something we need to contact you? And the reason I'm saying that, because like North Star, Morningstar are all mud projects. I have to provide those documentations to CEQ for the reimbursement, stuff like that.
Yeah, well, we're actually working that out right now. In a perfect world, we'd have these things worked out and tested before we went live with it. But we are running into, I guess, some issues where it's been set up in construction. Because in construction, unlike the CFA office and the IPRC office, they're dealing with one entity. CFA office, they're primarily dealing with the developer. The IPRC, they're primarily dealing with the consultant. But when it comes down to construction, we're dealing with contractors. And so each project may have multiple contractors. And so the way the system has been set up is it creates a separate record for each contractor. And so, in Excella, there's a documents folder. And so there's no subfolder structure. And so everything just kind of goes into one document. And then they set up virtual folders. But on the construction side, we really don't want those documents to be housed in either of 3 records. We really need one location for that information to be. And so what we're working for, we're trying to get set up is maybe have it set up in the parent record, which is the IPRC record. And so that's where we would most likely have those documents installed or located. Because that document that you turn in is relative to the project, not to the contractor. And so, but right now, I guess the answer to your question is we have maybe three folders for each project. We have a record for the utility contractor, record for the paving contractor, and then there may be a record for the streetlight contractor. And so we're trying to figure out how to get a common place to put those documents as opposed to either or those three locations. And so
We're working on it.
we're working on it. We're
That's
working
good.
on it.
And one other question, and this probably goes back to you, Mike, as well, too. I know that at the time when we bring our plans in, we pay the checks for the material testing, the inspection fees, goes to CFA, they release it. Since now it's going to be the burden of the developer to make sure he gets his lab online and inspectors, how are we going to get that funneled through CFA and to make sure that we have paid or retained the services in order to proceed with construction? So,
Well, for material testing, I just want to say that there was like a small administration fee, and that's going to be relative to the size of the project. But as far as the CFA office goes, we would let them know what that fee is after we've seen the project. And once that fee is paid, then you're free to choose whichever firm you like to provide the material testing on that project. Yeah.
Roy, hi, good morning. Nice presentation. So I have also a question related to the inspection as well as the material testing. And you mentioned that now all the fees would be bear by the developer. So for the testing, material testing, what about the inspection? And you mentioned the inspection would be based on the length of the construction, right? And so it won't be any more like 2% we used to charge, 2% for inspection, 2% for material testing for the developer project. And I guess I'm just kind of curious how you will come up with that, because some of the projects, you have also lift station and meter station and pump stations associated with those. And we do, my inspector does those inspection and all that. So how is it going to be all broken out?
Yeah. So before, we used to have the inspection cost was broken out by department. And so the developer, I presume, would have a check for TPW, and then they would have a check for water department. We're working with our finance department to come up with a single check. And that check is going to pay for all of the inspection related for that project. And so going back to the 2%, 4% on inspection, there's no more percentage. It's going to be per day. And so if that contract comes down and it has in there from the consultant is going to be 180 working days, then that's what the fee is going to be generated off of. Now, if we get to the end of the project and it took the contractor 160 days to complete that project, then there's going to be a refund issued to that developer for that difference. But if that 180-day project goes to 240 days, then that extra 60 days, we're going to be going to the developer to recoup that cost. And I imagine right now there's not and I'm just guessing, maybe the developers don't charge liquidated damages to the contractor. Or you do? Okay. Well, that would be another reason to, if you weren't collecting those liquidated damages, to assess those to the contractor to offset whatever that increase to inspection costs may be. Yeah, but we're getting away from percentages. Percentages don't work. We don't pay our employees based off of percentages. We pay them, rates. Yeah.
sorry, one more. So, I get it that it will be based on the length of the construction, but not all the inspector have to go every day, and sometimes they have to make multiple trips, you know. So I guess you will sort it out all out based on
Yeah,
and the
yeah,
complexity and all that.
yeah, we took all that into consideration where we come in and looking at the rates. We took a sampling of projects and looked at the inspector's time off in there. And it's an all-in rate, so all the support staff that contributes to that project, it's included in that rate. The mileage, it's all included in that rate. So it's an all-in rate, and it takes all those factors into consideration.
And when would you have that set up ready and all that? Because we have so many, like 4 or 5 projects, we have inspection going on, and we don't have any kind of setup. What do you have in plan in the meantime for those?
Are you talking about developer projects or city projects?
I think both.
Okay.
I can talk with you separately on that.
Okay, yeah, city projects, nothing's changed. We're just specifically having these changes in place for the developer projects, because the city is financing that city project.
Quick question about some of the retrofits that are going on relative to some of the accessibility around town for, is that all still going through TDLR for inspections, like where they're doing some of the stuff around intersections and for TP&W, or is the city playing a role in supporting that?
Well, we actually had a consultant come in and talk to our inspectors about 2 weeks ago. I don't know if you all know Chang Patel and Yerby. They have a group called Meet the Challenge out of Colorado, and they came there and talked to us about, because TDLR is something that's very important. Way TDLR is set up is if that project has if it has $50,000 or more of pedestrian improvements, then that project is required to have a TDLR inspection performed on it. And so we have several projects that meet that criteria. And so we work with the consultant on the developer projects, and we have consultants on our city projects to have that project reviewed by a registered accessibility specialist. And then once the improvements are completed, they'll have that TDLR inspection after the project. And so any project that meets that $50,000 or more threshold, then those projects should have that TDLR inspection performed.
And then how do y'all handle the ones that are smaller than that? Are y'all doing those in-house, or is that up to TP&W or the department to check and make sure that they've met the ADA requirements and TOS requirements?
Yes, that's up to the departments. And so our inspectors will make sure that, that project has been, let's back up a little bit. A lot of times when you're dealing with ramps, there's a standard detail. And so there is no site-specific design for that ramp. And I'll tell you that detail works on paper. It doesn't work out in the real world, because every intersection is different. Every wheelchair ramp is different. And so you have to look at each individual location specifically. And so that inspector works with that contractor to make sure that as best we can, we get those wheelchair ramps and those pedestrian improvements installed based off of the Texas accessibility standards.
Well, that's a good point. That's a good segue into next month's presentation. We will be having someone here to present information about the TDLR. So it behooves everybody to be here. It's going to be interesting.
Roy, you mentioned the red lines. You said that they're scanned and uploaded. Are those, where are those uploaded, and who has access to those?
That's a good question. Before I would tell you Buzzsaw. Right now, they are on my senior survey tech's computer. And what happens is we have these projects. We have BIM 360 now. And we have to work through the project managers to get access to that folder now. And so we've been kind of working with the PMs on the city projects to get the permissions set up for our survey group So once those red lines are scanned, we can upload it into the folder. And there's a folder, the folder structure off in BIM 360 is exactly the same as it was in Buzzsaw. And so specifically, that red lines are off in the, there's a folder for inspector, and then it has red line drawings under that folder, and that's where those red line drawings are installed. On Excella projects, just like what Tim was just asking, we're trying to figure out where to put it at. And so right now, the answer to that is it's still on my survey technician's computer. And so once we get that resolved with, we have a consultant, S-Cube, that we're working with on Excella. And so that was something we brought up earlier this week, and we have a call with him tomorrow. But we're trying to figure out where these documents that are related to the project should be stored. It shouldn't be stored in a folder that's specific to a contract. It needs to be in a global location that's relative to the project.
Anyone else? I do have a question, Roy. One last question.
Okay.
Once you receive the distribution package from the IPRC, can you just walk us through the process and how do you set up the pre-con meeting?
Yeah, so those plans, they like I say, they're delivered to the construction office, and Louis Gregory, our inspection supervisor, he'll get that set of plans, and he'll look at he'll give it like a look at, see what the project involves, where the location, and he'll look at his workload for the inspection team, and he'll try to identify an inspector that's out in that area to kind of reduce the drive time between project sites. But then also you look at the type of project. So if it's a specialty type project like a bridge rehab, you know, we want to make sure that we give that project to someone who has that type of experience. And so what Louis do, once he gets that project, he'll kind of identify which inspection team should get that project, and then that project is given to that inspection team, and from there they'll kind of work with their schedule to set up that pre-construction meeting. And again, we strive to have it set up within 7 days of once we received it from the IPRC office.
When is the day we can eliminate the 16 sets of plans, bring it down to you guys?
We, you try to get rid of the number of plans, the number of sets?
I was just wondering, because everything's high tech and we're still in paper world.
Yeah, I will say we do need to look at that, because I know my team are receiving like 3 copies of the contract documents. We don't need 3 copies of the contract documents. Everything the contract documents should be electronically. I know you all are submitting it in electronic distribution, so it's already tied to the project. And you know, we may need 1, 3 definitely not. And same thing with the plans, but those plans, that 16, it kind of gets distributed to different groups around the city. And I know from our perspective, we may want to make changes to that, and maybe some of the other groups may as well.
Because most of the time when I come to the pre-construction meetings, I'll bring a dozen of 11 by 17s, and everybody in your staff gobbles those up. And so, I mean, maybe it's just 11 by 17 is a lot easier, and it seems like and a lot of the contractors nowadays are scanning those drawings and putting their iPads, like DT Utilities. They don't carry any plans. They're on their iPads on the field as well. So something to look at.
Yeah, and I think that's the wave of the future. We just got our inspectors' iPads. We kind of grew up in a Windows world, so it's kind of like the world's been turned upside down on us. We're trying to figure out what to do with these iPads. But the iPad is definitely a tool for us as far as reviewing those plans as well, because it has a lot of features. We can kind of mark it up and send emails back to the contractors, back and forth, and take photos. And so that is a bit of a new technology that may allow us to reduce the reliance on those hard paper copies.
Well, as we all know, habits die hard in the city, so that's probably going to be something that's going to take some time to go ahead and initiate. But I'm sure that it will be one of the things that are forthcoming, especially now that we're going all electronic with Excella.
Yeah, we can talk about it, because I've actually talked to my group about that already. We really don't need a lot of the things that we're receiving with that distribution package. Yeah.
All right, if we don't have any more questions, we do have one more last presentation under the ACEC process. We've got that TDLR, like I mentioned before, that's next month, second Wednesday of the month, same place, same time. And I thank you all for being here. And I wish it was a larger group, but I guess you're the only ones who have any interest in this subject matter today. They missed out on it. So thank you so much again, and have a safe trip back home.
All right,
Bye.
thanks.